Welcome to the African Life episode of Flip the Planet. I'm Sean Walsh, and in each episode of Flip the Planet, we are going to do our best to clearly define some of the most challenging issues facing our generation, and then provide you with ways you can get involved and make a real difference. In this episode, we want to take a close look at Africa. In many ways, how we respond to the desperate humanitarian needs of the African continent will define our generation. If we truly want to help, we must believe in our power to change the planet. We must believe that our political will and the power of our imagination will help make the difference in Africa. And while Africa has problems that will take decades of persistent effort to solve, every solution begins with fully understanding the problem. So let's get started. The challenges for the people of Africa are formidable. AIDS, corrupt leaders, brutal genocide, civil wars, 19th century infrastructure, and oppressive poverty have decimated the continent and diminished the hope of its people. There are three big humanitarian challenges facing Africa. First is Africa's critical need for economic development through foreign and domestic investment in education, technology, infrastructure, business, and international trade. Second is the need to immediately bring the epidemic of HIV infections under control, bring medicine to those who have already contracted the virus, and bring prevention practices to everyone else. And third is to work toward an end to genocide and civil wars in the Darfur region of Sudan and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where bloodshed continues despite global political outrage and attempted intervention by the United Nations. All three of these issues can be influenced by us. How? By educating ourselves and our local communities about Africa's pressing needs. By enforcing our political will in support of Africa through our political leaders. By providing financial and political support of health and human service organizations in Africa. Here are a few basic facts. Africa is a continent of 53 independent countries, with a total population of 690 million people. It has large oil reserves on its northeast coast, and the largest diamond mines on the planet. It is a continent of incredible natural beauty and wildlife, which attracts visitors from all around the globe. Unfortunately, despite its natural wealth and beauty, 70% of its population survives on less than $2 a day. Disease, war, and famine continue to kill millions of its people each year, and basic education is denied to a large percentage of Africa's children. Can you imagine if millions of Americans were dying each year from civil war, AIDS, and starvation? Let's take a closer look at the three big humanitarian challenges facing Africa in the 21st century. Africa's economic development requires improved leadership and governance in individual African nations. That leadership must end widespread corruption that sees billions of dollars being stolen from government programs and slipped into private bank accounts in Europe. To help bring about the kind of governmental leadership and accountability controls needed to improve Africa's economies, the African Union established the New Partnership for Africa's Development, or NEPAD program. The goals of the NEPAD program include funding for Africa's transportation infrastructure, modernizing technology, providing advancements in agriculture, creating economic opportunities for women and youth, enhancing healthcare systems, doctors, clinics, and medicines. And finally, the NEPAD program is setting standards for safeguards to the environment and addressing the risks of global climate change. It is estimated that an additional $25 billion per year in foreign aid committed by the year 2010 will help Africa meet these basic needs. To put that amount in perspective, the U.S. is currently spending $25 billion every 2 months in its war in Iraq. In reality, aid to Africa is not a gift, but an investment in the global economy and global stability. It is the difference between creating trading partners for prosperity or training grounds for terror. Let's look at the impact of AIDS in Africa. Some 25 million Africans have died so far from AIDS, and 25 million more are living with HIV, including nearly 40% of the population in Botswana. The human, social, and economic implications of these facts are devastating. Between 20 and 40% of the workforce is being lost in the hardest hit countries, and the loss of the adult generation to AIDS has created 12 million orphans, with the number expected to grow to 18 million by 2010. 18 million kids without parents. That's like the combined populations of the cities of Los Angeles, New York, and Shanghai were nothing but orphans. To tackle the spread of AIDS requires Africa develop healthcare systems and provide antiretroviral drugs to AIDS patients. But it also requires that African communities develop a cultural and social response. Healthcare workers constantly confront traditional tribal practices by forming partnerships with religious leaders and traditional healers to overcome the legacy of past traditions and educate people about the future realities of the AIDS virus. Supporting African nations in their efforts to reduce AIDS will require additional funding to the tune of $10 billion annually. In 2003, President Bush announced the Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, a 5-year plan that brings about $4 billion to combat the global HIV/AIDS pandemic. That funding will end next year, and new funding will be in the hands of a new president and new Congress in 2008. While not specifically targeted for Africa, President Bush's initiative is intended to prevent 7 million new infections, treat 2 million HIV-infected people, care for 10 million HIV-infected individuals, and AIDS orphans. Political will to ensure that funding continues beyond 2008 will be in the hands of the American people, you and me. When the time comes, let's make sure we're not sitting on our hands. The third big humanitarian crisis in Africa is genocide. Since 2003, ethnic populations of the Darfur region of Sudan began to be slaughtered by the Janjaweed Arab militias. The Janjaweed have been enlisted by the Arab-ruled Sudanese government to burn villages and homes, massacre civilians and children, torture inhabitants, and rape both women and girls in an effort to, quote, ethnically cleanse Sudan of its ethnic population. Since February 2003, up to 400,000 people are estimated to have died in Darfur, and up to 2 million people have been driven from their homes. Of the approximately 2 million displaced, nearly 200,000 have escaped to the neighboring country of Chad. The United Nations has been in ongoing negotiations to work with the African Union to bring troops into the Darfur region to stop the violence and bring aid to the region. As yet, the Sudanese government has prevented this intervention of foreign troops into Sudan, and the small African Union military presence has not been able to bring an end to the genocide. On another front is the genocide in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Around 1,000 people die every day in the civil war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and at least 3 million people have died in the past 4 years in that country alone. In fact, violence causes as many deaths in Africa as does disease, with Darfur and the Republic of Congo leading the grim statistics. So how can we make a difference in the face of such tragedy and challenging circumstances? Demand that your university's endowments divest from companies doing business with the genocidal governments in Sudan and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Lobby Congress to provide additional assistance to displaced Darfuri and DRC refugees. Write editorials and letters to the editor of campus and local newspapers about the African genocide and the need for the international community to take greater action to end the violence. Join STAND, a student anti-genocide coalition, which is organizing on over 500 college, university, and high school campuses across the United States. Go to the link below to learn more. Support the health and human service organizations linked below with your financial and political support. Our sense of humanity should be outraged by the economic oppression, disease, and war that are ravaging Africa. To do nothing would be intolerable. To just do something is not enough. Go to the websites listed below and learn more. And do more. We need to help Africa.